everyone. Well, this is Mark Platten back again. Today's interview is with Scott Williams, also known as Skybear, one of a good friend of mine, actually. So several of the authors in this book I hadn't actually met until some of these interviews, and but not true with Skybear. He and I go back 20 some years, and he and
22 to be exact.
He and my wife Ariana go back all the way to high school. So in Phoenix,
elementary school.
No, it couldn't be elementary. She was all around in other places in elementary.
Really?
Really?
Was it junior high? Did she go to Mesa Junior High?
No, she went to somewhere else. She was in Montana or something like that in junior high. She moved there in 9th grade, I think it was, Scott.
Oh, I'm getting old. Okay. So just high school then.
Just high school then. It seems like it was middle school and elementary school as well.
That's
what you remember.
Yeah.
It's all
is
the same. Well, this is going to be a fun interview with this for sure. So my friend Skybear, in our book, The Art of Connecting. So this is the you can see a little gray streak across there. I'm running it through Amazon this time because our other publisher, Dog Ear, went out of business. So I'm redoing it on Amazon, which is why we're doing this relaunch. It's the perfect time to do this, and it makes all the sense in the world. And Skybear has chapter 12 in our book, and it's called Through a Musician's Mind. And you can see all the guitars behind him there. That's only a small sampling of everything that's in his room there. Here it comes. There's more, and there's more, and there's more.
There's the amps and the keyboards and the drums, and it's what we do here. This is where the magic happens.
So when we're talking through through a musician's mind, I mean, this is what Skybear has done his whole life. He's been a musician even all through high school. I'm guessing you had bands in high school and everything too there,
yep.
Scott, and you've always been in a band ever since. Like you said, you're in what, 4 or 5 or 6 bands?
Yeah, right? I'm in 3 bands. Weapons, Supplies, and Fear. I'm in 3 bands normally, but I sub for another couple of bands. So I'm kind of in 5 bands, but I really subbing for those other 2 bands. But I'm in a Rush tribute band, I'm in a classic rock band, and I'm in a ska band. And ska is music that came before reggae. Reggae is slow ska. Think Madness, Gwen Stefani before she didn't play ska anymore. Smash Mouth was ska when they first started. Lots of bands, Mighty Boss Tones. Some ska people have had like hits on the radio, and so that's what ska is. And I have the only ska band in Montana. It's called Big Ska Country. What's funny is I was doing it as a joke. I was like, let's just put a ska band together so we can get together every Sunday afternoon and just kind of play some ska. And all of a sudden I started getting calls like, do you have a ska band? Can you play this club? Can you play over here? Really? You guys want us over there? Okay. So now we're booked all summer again. And we're booked and we're at there's a Live at 5 series every Wednesday night in town at the big parks in town in Helena, Montana. There's a thing called the Live at 5, and we're the grand finale at the end of the summer on August 25th.
Nice.
So
nice. So
yeah.
So that's it. That's the musician part here. Get Scott started. We can't get him stopped. So I'm going to be careful how I.
I'm also on the spectrum.
That's right.
I'm also between ADHD and Asperger's. So it's like I'm not Asperger's enough to be completely gone, but I'm ADHD enough to go squirrel. So
right on. Well, I'll try to keep you contained a little, although it's a little bit tough for me at times too, my friend. So what I love about your chapter and about things is it really is through a musician's lens, and it's so different than how I experience nature. And that's what I love about this book, is that it's I mean, we've got 22 co-authors, and everybody's kind of coming at nature in a really different way. And some of them align a little bit more with me, and some of them are like really outside the kind of the spectrum of what I've played in and danced in and explored in, and yours is one of them, and we'll dig into that in a little bit. But first I want to know, since this is kind of our fifth year reunion of this book are relaunching, and I'm really excited about it. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be. I'm hoping we can reach more people with the book, because it's a good book. I mean, when you write something and you kind of put it down for a few years, you forget what's actually in it, and having to redo the book and reconfigure it for Amazon, Kindle, and then the paperback. And people think, well, it's the same thing. It's like, no, it's really different how you've got to design things for both mediums there. And, doing that, I had to read through it, or I chose to read through everything to make sure it was all, synced up right and things made it across correct. And in doing so, it's like, wow, this is really a good book. This is, from my perspective, it's like, this is a really good, pertinent book. 5 years later, it's not like it goes out of its message is still as pertinent now, maybe more so than it was 5 years ago. So I'm curious for you, my friend, in the last 5 years since we launched this, what has maybe changed for you, or stayed the same, or intensified with your relationship and connection with nature?
Okay, this is a really good question, because I ended up reading my chapter over again, knowing that I was going to be interviewed. Like, I better try and remember what I wrote, because it was 5 years ago, so I better check on it. And it's funny, because you go back, and I've made 3 solo albums. I've done stuff with other bands, and you don't listen to that album, after you've heard it every day for 6 months straight. It's like you just don't want to listen to it again. Like that has become work. Just like a skydiving cameraman. Skydiving, who would think that skydiving would be work unless you're a cameraman and you're like releasing adrenaline all day, 7 times a day? It's just like you're tired as heck at the end of the day. So skydiving sort of isn't fun anymore. And so it's the same kind of thing. So I read this book again, or I read at least my chapter. I read some of the other chapters, and I agree with you. I love this book. I want to read some of I haven't read all the other people's chapters yet, so I'm still reading some of that, and it's awesome. And what's changed with me? I'm still in Montana, so I'm still connect with nature as soon as I step out the door, pretty much.
Right.
But I still live in a town, where there's traffic and cars and noise and stuff. And so my chapter talks about being completely like technically aware, as in understanding the farthest sound that you hear and the closest sound that you hear. And can you identify all the sounds between this closest sound that you hear and that farthest sound? And you start to notice those things. And that in my chapter, it talks about the same thing with your sight. If the windows are closed, then this room is all I have to see right now. But if I open that window, I can see a mountain that's 20 miles away. And so all of a sudden, just opening that shade changes my entire perspective and point of view from where I'm standing, just by doing that. And so being conscious of that, like I always think of when people are self-conscious and looking inward and looking outward, there's 2 different directions of looking and consciousness. But technical consciousness, and this is the one thing that I kind of, and the interesting question of how things have changed is looking outward and hearing outward. So seeing and hearing, like when they say that term, what this looks and sounds like that actually puts a face and a name and a sound to the thing that you're saying, what this looks and sounds like, right? So what I've omitted from the chapter that I didn't put, and it was mostly because of word constriction. We only could write a certain amount. We had to keep it down and not be too wordy and try to keep it down. So we're trying to keep like the main facts and not blah, 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 which is what I can do.
What? You're kidding.
What? Me? Is to look inward. And that's what's changed with me is what sounds and things. I know I can't see inward, so I can't see my brain, and I can't, I can't just You know how the thing and what's the thing on the thing where you turn the thing and it shows and the camera goes on the other side and now shows outward. Because I have my students when I teach, you know, sometimes they accidentally touch the camera flip, and now all of a sudden you see that, you know, it's like I don't know where the flip thing is because it's my wife's computer, so I don't know I don't think there is a flip thing because this isn't an iPad.
Right.
Different thing, but imagine if you had like a thing that flipped your sound and visual inward into your brain. Well, you would only see physical brain stuff. But if you think about what is going on in your head, what's going on in your mind, what thoughts are happening, and if you can see those as, let's just use a universal example. The Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, looking out of her window while she's in her dream, looking out of her window and seeing, the scarecrow guy and the other people. And then there's the witch, the evil lady with her dog in the back of the thing, riding in the air. Remember that?
I do.
So there's, welcome to my brain. Looking in that window and going, Toto. You want to reach out and grab it. But that looking inward is what has changed in the last 5 years. I'm kind of like trying to look at my thoughts and think about, well, why am I mad about that banter between me and that guy on Facebook about saying something about, my dreadlocks or some kind of cultural appropriation? Why am I mad about that? Why is that bothering me? And why is that bothering me more than the dandelions in the backyard? It's like, yeah. And should the dandelions in the backyard be more important than somebody who, said something that felt offended by just the way I look? Wow. So there's that whole, we can't change the weather, but we can adjust our sails. And that was written on the side of a boat that was next to me that I was before I moved to Montana, I was living on a boat, and other boats had little sayings and names in the back of the boats and little things on the boats. And then one sailboat had on one side of the boat coming up to the stern was, we can't change the weather, but we can adjust our sails. And I was like, oh, there it is, So what's changed is looking inward and seeing all my thoughts and prioritizing them and discarding the ones that shouldn't matter and taking the ones that do matter and going, you have a Zoom meeting at 1:00. That matters. That has to happen at 1:00. So do the things that have to happen before. Some things take priorities, but other things need to be put away. And when you're concentrating and when you're meditating, the hardest thing for me is to close the window in the hurricane and not worry about Toto. That's your imagination and your dreaming. Close the window and think about something important, or go back to the important thing you were thinking about before you got interrupted by the Wicked Witch flying by the window.
Excellent. So I'm curious, Mike. Yeah, I'm curious about, so tell me, I love that you're reflecting inward, and I love the metaphor of our iPads and phones and stuff where we can flip back and forth, and how cool that is to be able to look inward. I love that, the visual there. I'm curious as it relates to your connection in nature and stuff. How does that, so that inward looking, how has that changed your relationship then maybe with nature, Scott?
What that has done is straight up reminds me to get out of the city.
Mm.
It reminds me to, like, why are you thinking about all these things, like this traffic decision and this work decision, and you're not even at work? Why are you thinking about work? You're not even, the kids aren't home right now. Why are you thinking about how the kids are doing and what's going on? You're not in those. What are you doing? And is it more important than dropping it and getting out of the house and going to building a fire in the backyard, going to the woods and just finding your quiet? Because if too many things are going on, you need to go for a walk. And if too many things are going on where even a walk's not going to help, then you need to go for a drive to go for a walk to get back into nature and reset, which I haven't done in a couple of weeks. So
it's time.
I definitely know, like, I can tell you right now and admit to myself and the world that I need to get out into nature. But the weather, like, we have a giant snowstorm right now, and it's the end of May. Montana, no wussies. That's the way it is. That's why I've been working on the band stuff and the music stuff more, because I can't get out as much. But you shouldn't even, like, seriously, like, I should go back to where I said no wussies. You really, like, the weather is still something you can get past. Like, unless it's like this whiteout blizzard, which no, don't go out. That there's some snow on the ground. And yeah, it's cold. Do you have gear for that? Get your gear and go out into nature. Like, this inward look should remind you why you're distracted by somebody that offended you, somebody that you offended, somebody that's, face that thing, that face place.
That face place.
My mom used to call it face place. I'm a member now on the face. Are you my friend on the face place? Yes, Mom. You have to post something. You have to take a picture of something and then say something about it. Okay, I'll do that. What should I take a picture of?
Come back to me, Scott. Come back to me. You're following that thread in some other direction.
Well, and then another thing is, like, go out into nature and maybe not take your phone and take pictures and post it on the face place. Like, you're in your face place out there.
Yeah.
So, get back to your face.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and what if you want to talk a little bit more about what you had said before we started kind of into the interview portion of this, where you're talking about kind of what COVID has allowed you to do with you and your dog going out somewhere. I remember you were saying, and that.
Yeah, all the gigs I had like 3 gigs a week going on in the summer last year, and they all got canceled. And when they all got canceled, I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to go out into nature. We camped a lot. My wife and I went and we did a lot of camping. I sold my toy hauler trailer that was supposed to haul a bunch of toys and go, and we called it the pimp glamper because we had hot water, we had a heater, air conditioner, a full bathroom, separate toilet and shower. Like, it was a nice trailer. Like, you could fit a jet ski and a bunch of kayaks and a bunch of stuff in. And the last time we went out, we blew the truck engine going up the steep, because Montana, go figure, went up the steep hill and blew the truck engine, and ended up having to rethink the whole, how much weight do we want to take out to the woods? So Denise goes, hey, I've been a tent camper all my life, and so have you. We don't need that pimp clamper. We don't need to drag that thing around when we go camping. We could just do a big tent. Just get a big tent then. You know, if a pimp clamper costs, you know, a certain amount, how much is a big tent? Is it that much more? Is it way less? Turns out it was way less. I found something online for like $200 and it's huge. 11-person tent. It's huge. And we have more room than we ever had in the pimp clamper. And we have a fire and we have like hot water, and we just had such a blast back in the tent again. And instead of pulling the pimp clamper, we can pull the boat and get out on the water too.
Right.
You know, so it's helped us to make real use of being back in real nature, not pimp glamping. I said it again because it's just so fun.
You've coined a new term here that'll go viral.
Pimp glamping.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's
and
great.
Guess what? That's probably a cultural appropriation too. So sorry. I say it as a tribute, as a nod to the culture. I'm not trying to take away from anything.
Just stop. You're already digging yourself a hole. Just put the shovel down. Scott. Just put the shovel down.
Can I just hand somebody else the shovel? Because more trouble than I was in before.
So, my friend, let's get back to the chapter, because as I mentioned, what's kind of so fascinating for me about what you wrote is you talked, and you mentioned this already, about really putting yourself in a place and listening to the acoustics of it and what sounds you can hear, and then mapping it. And I love that map. I mean, it is so different than how I would approach any situation, but as that's your life, right? You live and breathe sound and how things come together, and the mixing of those things, and how different instruments play together. And I was just, when I read it, I had to read it a couple times the first time. I was like, this is really bizarre. Oh my gosh, he's onto something in a whole different level of what I've even ever considered. And so it helped to make me go, oh my goodness, I don't use auditory signals in that way. How fascinating. And I have since kind of played with that myself when I've been out, because it's like, this gives you just a different perspective, and this either mental mapping of where things are in relationship to one another, and then you layer the sight on top. And many of us, I think it is most of us actually, a sight is our primary sense that we deal with. So when you set that aside and you make the sound, not just the sound itself, but really digging deeper into that, again, through the musician's mind, or your musician mind, which may be a whole different thing, but it was an exquisite look at nature in a completely different way than I had ever pictured it before, Scott. And it was really like, wow, what a cool way of experiencing and exploring nature. And several of the authors did both the chapter work, so kind of an exploration of what and how they connect to nature, and a rite, ritual, ceremony, something along those lines, to kind of give people tools to work with, because just reading our stories may not give you that insight, but yours did both at the same time. And I really liked that. It was your sharing of it, but through your sharing, you gave us the tools to explore that ourselves. And so I really enjoyed that. So I'm curious, maybe it's just because you are, you are through and through a musician, why you chose that story, or that kind of that chapter, why you wove it together that way. Because I know some of the other stuff that you've done spiritually, and through some of your more I guess shamanic-esque stuff that you've done.
Growing up, I grew up a Mormon, a hardcore, stalwart return missionary. My whole family's return missionaries, Mormon. And I've gone to church every week, and I would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to priesthood meeting. And being the ADHD spectrum guy that I am, I find myself thinking of a million things during prayer. why am I not just thinking of the prayer that's being said and associate myself and my life and my workings and my background and my future and whatever to the prayer that's being said? Not what's going on, did I leave the stove on, like weird things that would pop in your head when things are silent, but they were silent because of a group situation. And so the mapping is the thing that I had to do. I had to do it in my journal. I had to go in my journal and think to myself, why am I getting so distracted from every single thing? Like even when I want to practice a guitar part for something, or I get super distracted. So the mapping would be, that's why I say, for all of you people who are trying to do this exercise that I'm instructing, which is the mapping, where you like write on a piece of paper a perimeter and say, from this direction I'm hearing a crane, and over in this direction I hear a bird, but over in this direction I hear the wind coming from it because there's a storm coming in, and from this direction, so the farthest sounds I hear are these sounds. And so that in the chapter I talk about mapping. So I say that at first so that the mapping becomes a thing that you write down first. Just like when you're learning a song and you have to memorize the words to a song, you got to write them down. If you write them down yourself, that helps you to microcosm yourself into those words. The literal spelling of a word is that deep word and how it goes with this other word. So mapping helps to make you aware of it, and then you don't look at the map anymore because you're going to do a mapping of your visual too, and in what I say in the chapter. So you take your map and then let go of the mapping. Like at first, do it to train yourself to hear things and see things. And remember, the things that you can hear aren't the things that you can see. Most of the time, you're hearing, like right now, I'm hearing somebody's got the water on in the kitchen, and so the pipes are going through the wall, and I know where the pipes are because I've had to deal with things in the house. So I know where things are going, and I have this picture of a pipe inside of drywall going, so now I have this picture in my head of the sound that I hear, and so that makes me more aware of my sound, and my sight then goes, well, but what's blocking the sight between that sound and me? The wall, the television screen, this piece of gear, the stereo, the thing, and now it's me. Now I see that. So but all of that distracts me.
I would never have imagined that.
All of it distracts me. So sometimes now I realize, but because if you look at my surfaces, like they're useful things. There's not like clothes all over the floor and dirt and clutter. It's a clutter of things and stuff to do. And that's what's on the floor. Of course that's distracting, but if it's enough distraction, then it becomes a giant watch to me. And I only concentrate on that one pedal, like all I can see is this one thing,
That's really interesting, actually. I'd never thought of that. But because too little distraction means everything distracts you. Too much distraction means you can focus on a thing because there's just too much. So that almost like helps you. The more distraction almost helps you be focused. That's really interesting. I would never have thought of that.
At Thanksgiving, I am eating one thing at a time on my plate. Now I'm starting to do, growing up all my life, I was eating one thing at a time. And I don't know why I was doing it. Now I know, now I understand my spectrum and where I am and what distracts me and why. And, and I read books about it. And, I literally, when my psychiatrist was prescribing some meds for me, which was some Ritalin. Concerta is like a time-release Ritalin, and he was prescribing this. So I had to take a Wender, Utah rating scale for ADHD in adults. I had to take these tests. And after I took the test, he goes, Scott, how are you pulling this off? Like, he was serious.
Right.
How are you pulling this off, man? How have you become a high achiever? I'm like, I have a list. I have lists. And if I don't look at those lists, I will fail that day. But if you can find on the mapping your consciousness and your awareness of the things around you in nature, it makes it so nicer, because then when you get into the woods and you take this whole distraction thing and use it. My dad, one of the best things my dad ever taught me was there was a scripture about how your weaknesses will become your strengths. If you focus on that weakness and try to improve it, and it becomes your strength. And it's exactly when I'm learning a song. I pick out the hardest part of that song and get through that first. And then the rest of the song is a breeze, because that hardest part was the thing I was worried about. Same thing when you're in nature and you're in the woods. Are you in danger? First of all, because guess what? You're a guest out there. You are not the top of the food chain, at least not Montana. In California, maybe you are, unless you're close to like mountain lions, but then you're not the top of the food chain.
Or in the water.
Or in the water. You are definitely a guest there. And you have to have gear to even be a guest in the water. So if you don't have your scuba gear and you don't have your regulator right, and you don't understand your dive tables, and you don't understand, then you could die down there. You are not the top of the food chain. So when you get into nature, and get into nature often, but when you get into nature, figure out first, your first priority is, what things in the food chain are above me that I should be aware of? And you just go down the list. Bears, mountain lions, snakes, things that could bite you and hurt you. And this virus is nature, it's just trying to do what it's doing, man. It doesn't care what your religious preference is. It doesn't care about your sexual preference. It doesn't care who you voted for. It doesn't care anything about you. It doesn't care. It cares less about you than any politician who says he does. It's just trying to survive. Nature is just doing what it's doing. So with this map in your head and this prioritizing of things in nature, you can then stop worrying about, okay, well, a bear hasn't been sighted in this particular campsite in 50 years, so I'm pretty sure, so I can cross that out. So then I start crossing stuff out on my list, right? Okay, no bears, there's no snakes here. I've already done a sweep of the campsite, already, like, so then you can start relaxing and going, okay, not have to worry about, this, and this. All right, now, where are the open flames? Are they attended? You start thinking about things you've created that could be a danger. Where's that can that I heard got thrown out across the? So when you're in nature, you have to set up a list of priorities and in your map, and then so that you can start crossing that stuff out, so you can get to your meditation process that comes with being one with nature. Because then meditating means quieting everything down, turning it all off, getting back to your surroundings of the things that you've put yourself in. Another thing my dad taught me, you're not where you find yourself. No. You're not where you find yourself, you're where you put yourself. You find yourself where you have put yourself. So, and I was just thinking about that the other night when I was setting up a speaker and the snowboard was in the way and the speaker couldn't turn just right. And I had to move the snowboard, but I had one hand on the speaker and one hand on the snowboard. And if I didn't let go of one of the things, I couldn't do the other thing, but I had to let go of one of the things. So which thing is going to fall and do the most damage? Right? So in nature, you start prioritizing things so you can start crossing things off the list. And once I've crossed a bunch of stuff off the list, I can start meditating in nature and going, hi, little worm. Hi, little fly. Hi, little whatever. Hello, tree.
I was curious if you could actually still down, because it's really clear that you've got this, constant going. Are you able to actually still to get those things crossed off the list to kind of to find that kind of peaceful, quiet place there? You're laughing. I'm guessing the answer is probably no.
Because my answer is mostly. Mostly. There are times when I'm like still sitting at the campfire, coffee in my hand or a soda or whatever I'm drinking, and I forgot about the thing of something last week, or this other thing. Like, remember what did you cross that? Cross it out and come back, Scott. Because
I lost you there. I lost you about the last minute there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. No. It's like you're I can see you now. We're back.
You can see. I do this. This is what I do with my students when it looks like I'm just holding still.
Oh.
Like that when it like your picture freezes.
You're frozen.
Right? So I always do this with my students. Because that's level 1. Level 2, this. Level 3 is hard though. Ready for level 3? Try this sometime. See, I'm looking at myself in the thing. There you go. That's hard. That's really hard. And some kids can do it and some kids can't do it at all. And that just lets you know that we're not all quite at the same cognizance level sometimes. But when we do get to see eye to eye, it's a beautiful thing.
That it is. So we're kind of coming close to the end of things, because I want to know you've got practice that you've got to get to, and I really appreciate your time on these busy schedules. I do want to kind of reach out and talk about one last thing that I really enjoyed about your chapter there, Scott. It was about you talking about a friend of yours who had recently died in a car crash, and you're riding your Harley down
Gary.
the road. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because that was exquisite. And in fact, I was talking about Ashra yesterday, and I brought you up with it. It's like, do you remember Scott's chapter about that? So
that makes me that's an awesome thing. I was on my way back from Texas. I was doing a fire circle with you guys, and it was one of my first fire circles in that place out in Texas. I was on my motorcycle and I was on my way back, and my friend Gary Garrett, he didn't date in high school. He was like a little overweight in high school and he kind of was a nerd, and he liked specialty stuff, and so we were really good friends because we were both like really overly distracted with science and weird science stuff all the time. And he was really my best friend, and he had just funny comebacks. Like we would be like, this was in high school, right? And we're hanging out in my bedroom, and he's like laying on my bed with just like with his feet off the bed, just laying on mine. I'm sitting in a chair, and I go, "What are we doing today, Gary? What are we doing?" And he looks up and he's like, "Doing it." He just had really fast, quick comebacks, like doing it, and it was my best friend, and we really saw eye to eye on a lot of like weird, nerdy science stuff. And he finally got married in his 30s. And he was happy as a pig in slop, so happy. I just remembering how, when I say pig and slop, why you smiled.
I grew up on a hog farm. That's right.
Yeah. I love you, man.
Well, back at you, brother.
So Gary, he got married to a gal, and we were both Mormons. He got married to a gal in the Mormon church, and she was a widower, and she had 8 kids, and she was kind of well off. Her late husband, I don't know what he did for a living, but he made a lot of money, and they had so many valuable horses that they kept them at different stables. And so his job at 5 o'clock in the morning was to go attend all the horses in the different stables in town in different places. So that if anybody literally horse rustled them, I don't know what you call that, rustling, cattle rustling, yeah. Horse rustling, they would only take like whoever was at that one stable and not the other 6 horses or however many horses he had. I don't know how many he had, but he fell asleep at the wheel driving from one place to the next, and was in a really horrific truck accident, and it was a really horrible thing because that woman, she just lost another husband, and then Gary dies too, and so this was just really tragic. And he'd become super best friends with those 8 kids, and it was just the most tragic, most horrible story, except for the fact that he found love and he was happy and everything was so happy, and that when he went out, he was in such a good place, such a better place than I'd seen him in the 10 years before that had happened. And so, it was a sad funeral and everything. And so weeks later, I'm on this thing, and here I was thinking about him, and I was just remembering while I was on my motorcycle how much I missed him and how much I loved him and how good of a friend he was and how much he was patient with me and my stuff that I go through even today, even right now, and super patient and super good friend. And I was just literally crying while I was riding my motorcycle, and this giant raven, like the hugest raven I had ever seen. I was on my Sportster 1200, so I wasn't going fast. I was going about 55, maybe 60, but slower is faster on a motorcycle with a peanut tank. I learned this in my riding. If you go slower, A, you can enjoy the country more because you have longer to enjoy it, and B, your peanut tank will get better gas mileage, and then 60 miles a gallon will get you, 100 miles down the road. And so I was going rather slow. And so this giant black raven came down and flew just right above my helmet line. Like, he could have flown 6 inches higher and I would not have seen him. He came right inside of my helmet line, just right here, and I could see him. And he flew with me, right above me, and he was probably maybe 40, 50 feet away. Not super close, but just like that, and just kind of hovered in front of me for a long time. It felt like 20 minutes, but it might have only been 2 or 5, but it felt like 10 or 20 minutes. It was a long while, and I looked up, and it's almost as if because he was looking back at me while he was flying too.
Wow.
Just kind of like looking like this, and he's flying, and and I'm like looking up, and I was like, yes. And I said, hello, Gary. And as I said hello, Gary, he looked, flew sideways, and went like this and did like this cool aerial thing that I don't think he had to do. I don't think that was necessary for what he was trying to do. He went like, whoo, and did this like cool thing, and then flew off. And I cried the rest of the way that day. And it was just like, even if that was a pure coincidence, I don't care. I don't even care, because it touched my life the way Gary touched my life. And connecting with that, connecting with nature, proved to me right then, because I was on my way home from this fire circle that I had been in. And so my meditation head and my nature head had been amped up to the capacity that it could possibly be in on this motorcycle ride. So while I was riding, I was noticing all kinds of cool things. But that thing was just the most amazing thing I had ever seen in my life. And it just worked with what my mind was thinking of. So did I invoke it? Is it true that I invoked it? I don't care if it's true or not. It's true for me.
It's true for you. Yeah, it's true for you.
So
I was talking with Asher about that yesterday, about some experiences that she had when both her grandfather passed and when her daughter's grandfather passed, and some really cool experiences. And go back and read her chapter, and you'll see what I'm talking about, with dragonflies for her daughter and with a chickadee for her. And she talked about that, winged ones, and she's talked to all kinds of clients and other people, because she's a doula, so she brings children into the world, but she's also what did she say? Like a doula for people transitioning out of this world as well. And she says, the stories that she's been told, she's oftentimes it's these winged ones that, for whatever reason, they have receptors or whatever, when spirit needs to come through as messengers to let us know that. And it's like, yep, I've heard probably a dozen people myself I know have had the same exact thing with the winged ones. And so and here's the beauty of it. Like you said, it doesn't matter, because for you it's real and true, and nobody can ever take that away from you or challenge you on that, or say, or try to put any kind of scientific twist on it or anything like that. It has no value to it, because it was so pertinent, poignant to you, and it has such energy and truth to you that nobody can take that away. And that's the only thing that matters with that. And that's, for me, my friend, is where so much of what we're talking about, this connecting with nature, and the art of it, right? There's so many different ways of doing it. I love the way the art that you use to connect in nature is so different than what I use, but we get some of the same kind of results, because it's all about, what is it that I need to put my body into and my being into a particular resonance, that then I can be in tune, using some of your musical terminology. I can be in tune with nature, right? And I can listen to it, and I can harmonize with it, and we can create this amazing symphony of sorts. And I just so love your chapter, and I so love how you came about it and where you came about it. And I love you as a brother and as a friend, and we need to spend more time together. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your super busy schedule as you re-enter into all these practices and playing and those kind of things, to eck out some time. I know you had to move a practice that was scheduled for this time to fit me in. So thank you so much, my friend. It's been really a pleasure. I knew it was going to be fun, and and as always, I get to know, and during these interviews, I've gotten to know everybody a little bit more deeply, and I love when people come from their heart. I love your story about the raven there, because that was, for me, the sweetest part of this whole conversation, is really feeling, because I felt it from you. I just felt it. It's like, I'm with you there. I mean, I'm imagining as you're sharing. So, yeah.
I just like to leave one last thing in nature. If there's a bear that's there, it wants to eat you, or a mountain lion that wants to eat you, there's no such thing as a bully in nature. They're just doing what's natural for them. And so those of you who have been bullied in school, you know, if you were like the band nerd or the choir nerd or the Mormon nerd or whatever, there's no bullies out in nature. They can't take those things away from you. Those moments that you have in nature are your very own to cherish, and they can't be mocked. There's no possible way that they can be mocked or ridiculed or marginalized in any way. There's no one can marginalize the moments I've had in nature, and those scientific but beautiful psychological moments that make me understand that bullies only exist in people that are evil. And so in nature, there's no such thing as a bully. There are things that will hurt you, but they're not hurting you because they want to. Most of the time, they're only hurting you for one of two things. They're either hungry or they think you're a threat to them. So are you being a bully? And don't poke your stick into it. Yeah, don't poke the bear.
Don't poke the bear.
If you kids don't remember anything I say this whole time, don't poke the bear.
That's right. Well, it's been precious, my friend. I really have enjoyed this journey with you, and I really like what you're saying about, the nature does definitely give you an opportunity. It presents you. It doesn't hide itself. It doesn't pretend to be something it's not. It shows up as it is. And going back to the bullies and stuff, hurt people, right? Hurt people.
Yes.
Hurt
yes.
people.
Yes.
So the bullies out there are almost always
bullying is transferred.
Who have such pain and wounding that's the only that they've and have had their power taken away. That's
all they know, right?
It's the only way that they feel like they can contain some kind of control over their environment, and it's terrible that it is that way. So you kind of perpetuate that cycle, right? So you keep creating that, and it's hopefully we can minimize that, and it'd be great if we could eventually do away with that, because it doesn't help any of us. But it's been really good. It's been a good hour with you.
Love you, dude.
Hey, love you too, man.
Love and miss you.
Hey, right back at you. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. I'll see you next week. See you Saturday.
All right. Sounds good, brother.
All right. See ya.
Take care. You bet.